bottom line is, if you entered the country illegally, you did break the law.
We're going to force immigration laws without apology. You're going to see it get a hell of a lot bigger in the near future.
Good evening to you. Welcome to NewsNation Prime Special Report Crisis on the Border. I'm Natasha Zuves. We want to take you live to Laughlin Air Force Base near Del Rio, Texas right now. Any moment, new Homeland Security Chief Kristi Noem set to touch down tonight. We have more on her visit to the border in just a moment. Her counterpart in the Trump administration, newly confirmed Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, putting all options on the table tonight, including military strikes in Mexico. This after President Trump designated Mexican cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And tonight, Mexican cartels continue to terrorize U.S. agents. Border Patrol receiving new intel this week that cartels have greenlit the use of weaponized explosive drones against Border Patrol and U.S. law enforcement. This hour, our NewsNation correspondents will bring you on the ground across the border from Texas to California. ICE operations are ramping up this week. We know Border Czar Tom Homan is on the ground in Chicago overseeing it all. The Trump administration intent on deporting undocumented migrants.
Our message is simple. If you are a criminal, illegal alien, you will be arrested and deported.
Tonight, we are breaking it all down, including the deadly new graphic threats against agents. In a memo obtained exclusively by NewsNation, new warnings about calls to assassinate ICE agents growing on social media tonight. The posts calling for the murder of ICE agents, to impale them with nails, to urinate and defecate in their vehicles. ICE agents are pushing ahead. Take a look at the newest numbers from this week, averaging nearly 1,000 per day. The agency now aiming for 1,500 arrests every single day. Border Czar Tom Homan speaking to NewsNation, saying that Operation Secrecy remains critical after 2 missions were leaked in Chicago and Aurora, Colorado.
We got many target cities, but I'm not going to share them with you because we got to keep our officers safe. Matter of fact, Chicago, that operation was leaked, so we had to reschedule that one. So we need the element of surprise, right? Because officer safety issues. We don't want the bad guy to know we're coming, to keep our officers more safe.
The U.S. military leading deportation flights out of the country, fortifying the southern border as well. The Army, National Guard, and the Marines estimated to be more than 4,000 strong tonight. The big question, with nearly 1.5 million undocumented individuals set to be deported, where will they all go? President Trump answering that question loud and clear. Trump revealing that tens of thousands of migrants considered the worst of the worst will be headed to Guantanamo Bay.
We have 30,000 beds in Guantanamo to detain the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Some of them are so bad we don't even trust the countries to hold them because we don't want them coming back, so we're going to send them out to Guantanamo. This will double our capacity immediately, right? And tough. That's a tough place to get out of.
A lot to get to tonight. We are starting with NewsNation border correspondent Allie Bradley, live for us in Del Rio, Texas tonight, where new Homeland Security Chief Kristi Noem is arriving any moment now. Allie, what are you monitoring tonight?
Yeah, hey, Natasha. So this will be the first trip to the southern border for DHS Secretary Kristi Noem in that role. We were actually down here with her when she was here in May as the governor of South Dakota, because she had been sending troops down to the southern border for years in support of Governor Greg Abbott's efforts down here. So we saw the DHS secretary really taking it to the streets, quite literally, where she was out in New York as part of these ICE operations that we're seeing across the nation. Now, while she was down there on these ICE operations, they actually arrested who she says is a ringleader of the vicious Tren de Aragua Venezuelan gang. So that's one of the things that she has kind of accomplished since she's been down here, really bringing attention to that. Now, she's also removed TPS for Venezuelan migrants. She has also frozen grant funding for NGOs when it comes to immigration. We know that that is a topic for Congress that they're going to be digging into. So we expect DHS Secretary Kristi Noem to be here any moment now. She's arriving at Laughlin Air Force Base, and then we expect her to be accompanied by the Border Patrol chief, who is actually Governor Abbott's former border czar, Mike Banks. So he will be down here as well. They'll be touring the area. They'll be talking with personnel down here, and then they will actually be joining Eagle Pass's muster. So she will get a firsthand look at what these agents are up against down here at the southern border. But I want you to hear kind of what she said when she was on the ground in New York and kind of the energy that she's bringing to this effort. Take a listen.
Here in New York City this morning, we are getting the dirt bags off these streets.
So when I was down here with then Governor Kristi Noem, she was very adamant about securing the border, Natasha. It was a priority for her. So it's not that surprising to see her in this space as DHS secretary. But a lot of people want to see what she's going to do moving forward. She's already been very tough on immigration. Like I said, naming some of those issues with TPS and also the NGOs, two things that Congress is also looking at, Natasha.
And Ali, meanwhile, we see Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth putting all options on the table tonight, including military strikes in Mexico to go after cartels. Ali, not the first time we've heard a Trump official discussing strikes in Mexico itself. Tell us about that, and tell us about the new cartel threats you're monitoring tonight.
Yeah, so obviously when it comes to those criminal cartels, that is something that the president has really taken aim at because they have designated them as a terrorist organization. They have heard for years that the cartel controls the southern border. So hearing the defense secretary say all options are on the table and we're going to go in and use these military strikes against the criminal cartels is something that also isn't that surprising considering the efforts being made by the Trump organization because of what's happening in Mexico. The cartel continues to get stronger. It's a $13 billion a year industry, according to Congress, when it comes to moving people across the border illegally. So you see that operation continue to grow, and that is something the Trump administration wants to really contain. Now, when it comes to these threats that we're seeing, the cartel just recently authorized the use of weaponized drones. A very shocking move here, and something that agents that I talk to say is unprecedented because there's always kind of been an agreement, Natasha, where the cartel kind of stays over there and operates over there and doesn't breach this side because they would ruin their pathways, their thoroughfares to actually move drugs and people into the country illegally. It would be a big problem for them. But they're getting desperate because the border is pretty secure. We're only seeing about 600 people cross the border every day. And so they're not making that money. So what are we going to be seeing? Retaliation against Border Patrol, things like that down here at the southern border. So in this memo that we obtained where they're authorizing these weaponized drones, Border Patrol agents, they're being advised to remain cognizant, wear their ballistic armor, but also use their long guns. So that's something I haven't seen in an alert or an advisory for Border Patrol. But it seems like those violent threats are escalating, Natasha, and something that obviously is cause for concern when it comes to what's happening down here at the southern border. A lot of attention is on the interior, but there's a lot of enforcement down here to protect the agents, officers, and also the community down here, Natasha.
And speaking of enforcement, Ali, we are seeing ICE enforcement actions continuing coast to coast this week. Border czar Tom Homan saying leaks around mission operations are causing safety concerns for law enforcement. But it's not just leaks, right? There's a growing threat to law enforcement and Border Patrol. I know you're monitoring a lot of it on social media. Ali, these are graphic threats. What can you tell us?
Yeah, and a lot of people watching probably wouldn't be that surprised that law enforcement right now involved in a very controversial situation are getting some kind of negative feedback, some threats even. And these threats are being taken seriously enough by CBP that they kicked out a memo agency-wide alerting of these threats and really advising people to be more aware because some of these threats are extremely graphic and they're out there doing these operations. These are targeted enforcement operations where they apprehended over 8,200 people already. So that is what they're tracking right now. They're averaging around 812 arrests a day based on what we've been tracking since January 23rd. But when it comes to these threats, some of them are calling for people to spit in ICE officers' food, to impale them with nails, to defecate in their vehicles, and some, Natasha, just outright call for the murder of these ICE officers. And again, this isn't a new operation, Natasha. It is on a grander scale under the Trump administration. But gosh, earlier in January, ICE arrested over 400 people in a single operation. So this is a fugitive operations task force that they actually apply for in a detail, and it's a 2-year detail. And they're out there doing this job with dockets, with targets. They know who they're going after, but unfortunately, like Tom Homan says, they're going to end up with some collaterals. And we've seen that as well, Natasha.
Yeah, and Ali, President Trump, meanwhile, announcing he is sending as many as 30,000 undocumented migrants to Guantanamo. And we see nearly 1.5 million set to be deported. So this is really just a drop in the bucket. Deportation flights, meanwhile, are ongoing. We see this new agreement being reached with Venezuela tonight. There's so much to unpack. So tell us more about this deal. And in addition to Guantanamo Bay, what other locations will undocumented migrants be headed to?
Yeah, this was a big one here when the Trump administration sent officials over to Venezuela to literally meet with Maduro, who has been contentious and a problem for the United States for quite some time. They actually haven't received a flight back from the United States in Venezuela for about a year. So this is kind of an about face here where Venezuela is saying, hey, we are going to accept our Venezuelan nationals back. We are proud to accept them back, which is interesting to hear. But they're also going to be receiving the violent criminals, which include Tren de Aragua. We know that's a gang that started out of Venezuela that really has taken a stronghold here in the United States. Representative Tony Gonzalez argues they're present in every single state. So Tren de Aragua is an issue. But when it comes to, like you said, that's a drop in the bucket to be able to house about 30,000 people at Guantanamo Bay. So where else can they actually get help from without congressional funding? Homan says, we need Congress funding, but if we don't have that, we'll do what we can with what we have. You saw in there some of those options. Sheriffs across the country are jumping in. We went up to Wyoming, Laramie County Sheriff. They're offering about 200 beds to the Trump administration so that they can house people. Fort Bliss has space for undocumented people. They have space for unaccompanied children as well. And then you, of course, have a base in Colorado that is being used as well right now, causing a little bit of pushback from some of the law enforcement, or not law enforcement, but elected officials there. So we'll see how this all plays out. But Guantanamo Bay, those 30,000 beds is an interesting one because when I look at the ICE capacity right now, there are 41,000 people that are in ICE custody. So, you know, that's only 30,000. You've got 11,000 left that you're going to have to find a bed for or space for. And I know ICE only has about 30,000 beds right now, Natasha. So they're reeling with that and dealing with that as well.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Ali Bradley, a standby. We will come back to you in just a minute. But tonight, we're also tracking this. Border Patrol agents in the San Diego sector coming across new weapon smugglers, a new weapon that smugglers are deploying to thwart Border Patrol agents and to target them. We do want to head now to the San Diego sector. NewsNation Border Report correspondent Sal Rivera live for us from Otay Mesa. Sal, show us what cartels and others are deploying against Border Patrol.
And this has been going on since last year. And it's been going on primarily in this area where we're standing in Otay Mesa, which is an area between San Diego and Tijuana. Obviously, we're standing just to the north of the border. On the south side, on the Mexico side, is the Tijuana International Airport. In fact, off in the distance, you can kind of see its control tower. This is the area where primarily this organized and choreographed effort to disrupt Border Patrol operations has been taking place. And what is happening is as Border Patrol vehicles cruise up and down the border along the border barriers, when they encounter large groups of migrants or they are dispatched to respond, to stop, to apprehend migrants, what's been going on is that the smugglers or people working with them start tossing these spikes or wooden planks, 2x4s with nails driven through the wood, and they toss these items onto the path of the moving Border Patrol vehicles that are responding, that are headed to apprehend the migrants. So this is dangerous because obviously a tire get blown out, a vehicle agent could lose control, and that could be very dangerous. There are also these spikes, which are basically bent nails that are welded together. They are often left behind, and they're very hard to see. So perhaps in the days ahead, an agent or even a migrant could step on these nails and hurt themselves. Luckily, according to Border Patrol, they have not seen any injuries. This has happened. They have seen it 20 different times, 20 different occasions where these spikes were used, tossed into the path of Border Patrol vehicles since last year. But again, luckily, no one has been injured. Border Patrol is telling us that this is not just a new way to disrupt Border Patrol operations, but actually injure and hurt Border Patrol agents. From San Diego, Salvador Rivera, back to you in Chicago.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Sal and Otay Mesa tonight. Thank you. Let's head back to Ali Bradley now with more context on some of the threats that Border Patrol is facing on the ground. Now, Ali, you're saying this is not quite a spike. How would you describe this?
Yeah, so they're actually called caltrops. It's something that they have seen down here at the southern border several times, and they come in a lot of different variations, as Sal was just explaining. And back in September, an alert actually was circulating amongst Border Patrol, warning them that these smugglers would be using them. They actually arrested a guy who was trying to transport people illegally into the country. And in his vehicle, he had those, what you're looking at your screen. Those look a little bit different than the nail Saul was showing us. But so these are called caltrops, and they throw them out behind their vehicle when Border Patrol is pursuing them, and that will deflate their tires, cause issues for Border Patrol, and potentially cause them to crash, which then gives them the green light to continue on with their smuggling of those people. So that is something that they actually found in a smuggler's vehicle. And I mean, you see it, no matter how you throw them, they basically land upright so that they're effective in disrupting those pursuits. So definitely something that we've seen down here at the border, and an alert that has come out in the Del Rio sector as well, Natasha.
Appreciate that insight as always. Ali, I know we'll come back to you later this hour. Thank you so much. I do want to bring in News Nation's Jorge Ventura at the border in San Diego tonight. And Jorge, you have a major update on the Tren de Aragua gang, this particularly vicious and brutal gang. It is operating in all 50 states. Jorge, you're monitoring this gang is splintering into two factions now. There is warring going on inside of the gang. What can you tell us?
Yeah, that's right, Natasha. This Venezuelan gang is one of the most notorious from Latin America. It's a gang that the majority of Americans a couple years ago probably never heard of. Now they've expanded here into the United States and established those criminal networks. We are now learning from officials in New York, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Southern District, that now, according to them, an investigation of suspected Tren de Aragua gang members actually did reveal that there is now interfighting between the gang. In some cases, some of the gang members are disavowing Tren de Aragua and calling themselves anti-Tren. Officials say that Tren de Aragua gang members have been involved in numerous shootings stemming from hostilities between Tren de Aragua gang members and now anti-Tren. And this is all coming as during the 2024 presidential campaign, President Trump did promise his voters that his administration will go to great lengths to deport Tren de Aragua gang members in the country illegally. Authorities in New York this week arrested 10 individuals alleged to be members or associates of Tren de Aragua that were trafficking firearms into New York City. In Colorado, federal authorities carried out an operation in Adams County at a makeshift nightclub targeting drug trafficking and members of that TDA gang. Nearly 50 individuals in the country illegally were arrested that night. Meanwhile, in North Dakota, authorities found a TDA gang member during a traffic stop. He was taken into custody and is now awaiting removal proceedings. And in South Carolina, federal agents arrested another TDA gang member that was reportedly dealing fentanyl. This is a gang that blends into the millions of Venezuelan nationals that have come into the country illegally. It's a gang that often exploits their own countrymen. And Natasha, there are now reports that the Trump administration is also in talks with the country of El Salvador to see if El Salvador will accept Tren de Aragua gang members in their prisons. It's still a developing situation, but it's clear that the Trump administration has now targeted this gang and is moving as quickly as they can to remove these individuals, Natasha.
Jorge Ventura live in San Diego tonight. Thank you. We appreciate it. And Jorge Ventura, Sal Rivera, Ali Bradley, News Nation team coverage from across the border tonight. We'll see you all back a little later this hour. Thank you. Let's bring in now to talk more about these recent Tren de Aragua arrests. We have Aurora, Colorado Councilwoman Danielle Gurinsky and retired ICE Field Director John Fabricatori. Welcome both. Thank you for coming on. Councilwoman, I actually want to start with you because I know you've seen real impact from the TDA gang in your own community. What have you seen and what concerns you about it splitting up into two factions now?
Yeah, I mean, the concern about it splitting up into two factions is each faction is going to make it their intent to continue growing. And what I have seen here in Aurora is just devastating, from sex trafficking to kidnapping, murder, unlimited amounts of car thefts, and just actual human suffering, real human suffering. And it's been horrifying to me. And of course, I lived through battling the media and battling elected leaders in my state trying to get this truth out about Tren de Aragua.
Tell me more about that. You say you've spoken out against the TDA gang. That you were painted as being anti-migrant. I hope we have this tweet that we can bring up, this post on X. Tell me more about how you feel that your position has been mischaracterized in your words. And also tell me more about this, that the TDA gang, we have heard over and over again on News Nation, often really victimizes the migrant community itself, that there are Venezuelan migrants and others who are applauding TDA gang members being taken out of these communities?
Well, that's right. I mean, the largest victim in all of this of Tren de Aragua has been other migrants, other Venezuelans, Colombians, folks from Honduras. I have had many of them tell me they wish that they could go back to Venezuela, that they would be safer there. The man that was kidnapped in Denver and had fingers chopped off did self-deport back to Venezuela and has since checked in with me and told me that he feels safer there. So for the folks for months and months that painted this as anti-immigrant rhetoric, the only people that those folks were protecting was Tren de Aragua themselves, and basically gave them a green light to commit all sorts of crimes throughout the Denver metro area and terrorize people. And the most targeted were other migrants and was the immigrant community, because they are the least likely to call 911, to call the authorities for help, for fear of deportation.
Yeah, the most vulnerable. I hear that point. John, I want to bring you in here. I saw you nodding just a moment ago. We just heard about an arrest of nearly 50 people in your neck of the woods. Some allegedly have ties to the TDA gang. What more can you tell us about this? And what have you heard about reports of TDA gang members splitting into these two rival factions?
Yeah, look, Councilwoman Jurinsky and I have been talking about this since August. And, if local law enforcement and federal law enforcement would have acted on it prior, we might not have the amount of gangs that we have here right now. But they were allowed to grow for months. And now we're seeing things like 50 members arrested at a dance party, in northeastern Colorado. So, look, they're going to continue to grow. They came here to the United States because they knew that they could make money. They knew that they could set their drug trafficking up. They've been using prostitution to make money, and they're going to continue to grow. And now we're seeing them actually splintering, and a side group is stepping apart, calling themselves anti-Tren. But they're not a good gang. They're going to be warring by this summertime. So we're going to have more problems unless we stop them right now.
John, you used to be a field director for ICE. I'm interested in your unique insight here, because as we were having these conversations last week, there were reports of quotas being put in place, at least 75 arrests per field office per day. And there were those who are concerned that that means eventually there will be collateral captures. They will go for criminals first, but there is a limited number of that. What is your response to that?
Well, look, we've always arrested collaterals. And number one, if you're in the United States illegally, you broke the law. So, whether people say it's civil law, we can also go criminally with 1325 and 1326 charges. So you broke the law coming in this country. If you're here illegally, at some point in time, you're going to have to rectify that situation. So you may encounter ICE and you might get arrested. You shouldn't be here illegally.
Aurora, Colorado Councilwoman Danielle Jurinsky and retired ICE Field Director John Fabricatori. I appreciate both of your perspectives tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We want to bring you this happening right now, moments after President Trump issued new stiff tariffs against imports from Canada and Mexico. We are already seeing the backlash tonight. Mexico's president now ordering retaliatory tariffs against the U.S., just announcing this in the last 30 minutes. No word yet on how much or which goods specifically will be affected, but we know everything from fruits to vegetables, beer to meat may be on the table as tariffs go into effect in Canada and Mexico. Your grocery bill may be going up. We've been tracking the spread of that violent Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, expanding its reach across the U.S., now operating in all 50 states. Known for particularly brutal violence, drug trafficking, and extortion, the gang has been labeled a foreign terrorist organization by President Trump. And now law enforcement is cracking down. Just this week, multiple arrests were made, including 10 alleged gang members in New York and 5 more taken down in Chicago, as they are continuing to infiltrate migrant communities. More than 1,000 members of the violent Tren de Aragua gang have now spread to all 50 states. One of the reasons President Trump has labeled the gang as a foreign terrorist organization. The TDA gang is notorious for brutal violence, drug trafficking, and extortion. They're often seen wearing high-end streetwear like Chicago Bulls jerseys or Jordan sneakers. They also have distinct tattoos featuring Venezuelan flags or gang symbols. The men charged with the murder of nursing student Laken Riley in Georgia were both connected to the Tren de Aragua gang, one of them having a history of violent interactions with law enforcement, including assaulting a Border Patrol agent.
Sanctuary cities like Chicago, Denver, and New York have all become hot spots.
They go to those cities because they already have their associates there situated in those cities. So they just go to join them and further their criminal enterprise.
In New York, the gang has already turned violent. 2 members attacked police officers in Times Square. The gang also linked to robberies and extortion in the city. But the crackdown has begun. Just this week, 10 alleged gang members hauled in on criminal charges linked to gun trafficking. In Chicago, officials say Tren de Aragua has infiltrated the migrant community for more than a year, clashing with local gangs and terrorizing the people there. 5 alleged gang members busted just this week. In Aurora, Colorado, just outside of Denver, entire apartment buildings once under the gang's control have been ordered shut down, with DEA Rocky Mountain Division nabbing a suspected Tren de Aragua gang member from the apartments. Even in Texas, a non-sanctuary state, Tren de Aragua is active, linked with human smuggling in El Paso.
We don't get a handle on them. They're going to become an even bigger problem than they are today.
And we turn to a family directly impacted by this. August 5th, 2023, it was a warm Saturday evening, around 80 degrees outside. The sun was still up. And that evening, 37-year-old mother of 5, Rachel Morin, made a decision that would change the course of her life and, of course, the lives of those she loved. She decided to go for a run on the scenic Ma and Pa Trail in Harford County, Maryland, and she never came home.
My daughter is like so many other American girls that go about their life and they're just caught unawares from behind, dragged off the main road, trail, whatever, strangled, raped, murdered. Some have been found, some have not.
And in so many ways, Rachel's story echoes a painful global reality. A woman is killed every 10 minutes. Morin's alleged killer, Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez, began his suspected crime spree, one rife with violence against women from the beginning, in his native country of El Salvador, where he is accused of murdering a woman in December of 2022. We know in early 2023, he crossed the southern border 3 times. He was expelled every time by Border Patrol, but he finally succeeded on his 4th attempt. After that, he traveled to Los Angeles, where he was linked to the assault of a woman and a 9-year-old girl before making his way to Maryland and allegedly taking Rachel Morin's life. And in Friday's hearing, a Harford County judge has denied the request to move the trial of Rachel Morin's accused killer. The defense had argued that the intense media coverage made a fair trial impossible. But the judge ruled that despite nationwide attention, the case will stay in Harford County. We are honored to bring in again Patty Morin, Rachel Morin's mother. Patty, I appreciate you so much. And I have to tell you, you are still on my heart since our last conversation, because you shared something remarkable. You were so open that you made the decision to go back to the site where your daughter was taken. I want to open the floor to you tonight very quickly. What do you want everyone to know about what you're going through right now? And what do you hope is next for this suspect?
I can't talk about the suspect per se, because the hearing hasn't happened yet. It'll be April 1st. And so there's some things that I can't discuss. But I would like folks to know that because of the support of so many people across this nation and actually across the world that have poured out for our family, it has been very encouraging and helpful as we go through this process of grief. So I just want to thank everyone for their kind outpouring and prayer. I also wanted to say that I'm very encouraged by President Trump and the Lakeland Riley law that was just passed. I really believe if that law had been passed 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or if the former administration had just obeyed the law that's been on the books for decades and just followed through, that we wouldn't have this crisis in America that we have now. And
yeah, I know you were at the White House last week with this signing of the Lakeland Riley bill. What was that experience like for you? I imagine it was such a mix of emotions.
It was a mix. We were treated like royalty, which I so greatly appreciated. It was so gracious of them. But also, to have the interaction with the other mothers. We've kind of become, like, for lack of a better word, a club of angel moms where we're supporting each other. And it was so heartwarming to be able to share your heart with someone else who can comprehend the pain that you feel. So it was sad for all of us, but at the same time, it felt like a place of support.
What do you think your daughter thinks about the fight that you have kept alive and everything that you're continuing to do, the bravery it takes to come on national television like you have done, like you are tonight, the message you're sharing?
I was asked this at the White House, and I broke down in tears because I've never thought of it before, but I think that she would be proud because she is a defender of life too. Yeah, I think all mothers are. We want to protect our families and our loved ones. And I wasn't there to protect my daughter, but I don't want another mother to feel the pain that I feel. I don't want another child to not have a mother. And so I think she would be very proud of me, proud that I'm an extreme introvert. So to be able to do this, it's just because I love her so much. And I want her life to be honored. And I want to be able to use my voice and her story to save lives. And so, yeah.
I want to bring up something that really struck me. During the Senate hearing, you actually spoke about being the victim of a sexual crime as a child. And please only disclose what you are willing to share. But how has this colored and impacted this entire experience for you? I know you say you are an introvert. I'm sure you could never imagine the kind of world stage that you are on today. But tell me more about this.
Yeah, I would never have imagined being where I am today. When I was 14, I was kidnapped by a criminally insane man. He came into my house, took me. We walked for 60 miles over a 3-day period. Didn't eat, didn't sleep, was raped at night. We were heading towards the Canadian border when a police officer drove by on this back road and saw me. They weren't expecting to find me alive. So when I got the story, or not the story, but the information that Rachel was missing and that they had found her body, it really tore me apart because a part of me could understand some of what she suffered because I had suffered the same thing, not to the extent she did, but my daughter was raped. I know what it's like to be raped. Not knowing if you're going to live or if your body's going to be, when we were walking in the woods, there were other homeless people that were in the woods. Was this man going to, give me to these other men when I was a teenager? So just the fear that you have for your life and just the shame that you feel. She felt those things. And so it broke my heart to know that she had experienced those things and not be able to be there to help her. But, obviously she experienced so much more than I.
Patty, I'm so grateful that you were willing to go there and share that with us tonight. And what a statement that she was raped and your daughter was raped and that you know what that feels like. I'm so sorry. And I'm so impressed yet again with your strength, with your resilience, with your willingness to lay bare things that are unimaginable and so important. Patty Morin, thank you. You honor us. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you for inviting me.
We are back with News Nation's Border Special, and we are learning that Texas military members are assisting undocumented migrants at the border. We're bringing back our News Nation border correspondent, Allie Bradley, on this. And Allie, there are specific things that these troops can and cannot do. What are you learning?
Yeah, so a lot of people hear militarization at the border, right? It's kind of intimidating, but troops have been down here for years. We have about 4,100 soldiers down here right now, and Texas military has kind of their own military down here. They have a Texas National Guard. So we were actually there when an undocumented migrant from Honduras crossed the river illegally in Eagle Pass and into Shelby Park, and she was greeted there by Texas military members. And when we talk about what the military can and can't do down here, this is really a display of what they're able to do. They don't have arrest authority. They don't have immigration authority. All they can do is deter. And they didn't deter her. She crossed anyway. So instead, they were telling us they were trying to move her out of that area. They were trying to move her to where the fence ended so that she could be apprehended by Border Patrol, someone with immigration authority. But here's the deal. She just stops walking. The law enforcement behind her continue to tell her to walk. They continue to try to encourage her. She stops. Sources tell us it took at least 3 hours for Border Patrol to actually come and apprehend her. Now, it's not clear right now if the call to Border Patrol took 3 hours or if it just took them that long to get there because they were busy with something else. But that really is, Natasha, the full display of what we're seeing down here with the military. And that's why sources say military shouldn't be used as police in this space. Instead, they should be used as engineers building fence to help deter, to help kind of be security. But they can't really do much when it comes to the immigration side. So they feel like it's a little bit of a waste of their resources. Now, when it comes to what they can and can't do, another element that they're tasked with is unaccompanied children. When it comes to these children that come over and they don't have any parents with them, Border Patrol and law enforcement down here have no jurisdiction with these children. They actually have to be turned over right away to Health and Human Services Office of Refugee Resettlement, which is actually something that RFK Jr. would be at the helm of, something that we've heard him talk about extensively about these children. We know Congress has isolated about 320,000 children who came into the country unaccompanied, and they were actually kind of unaccounted for. So right now, Tom Homan is vowing to go find those children alongside RFK Jr. RFK Jr. just saying that in his confirmation hearing, that is a priority for them. Natasha, it's a priority for America, too. And I've met some of these unaccompanied children, and it's devastating. Those two little girls right there in that video, 7 and 9 from Guatemala, they were crying. They were saying their mom was already here somewhere in the United States. Oftentimes, these kids are left behind as payment. They are promised they'll be reunited with their parents, usually with a note card. But unfortunately, sometimes those note cards are actually sending them right back into the hands of traffickers. Natasha.
It is a horrifying situation. Allie Bradley in Del Rio, Texas, we appreciate it as always. Thank you. Governor Greg Abbott now deploying tactical strike teams to work alongside federal partners to help secure the southern border. And our Allie Bradley reports.
NewsNation was there when the Texas National Guard, Texas DPS, and Border Patrol hit the ground and the sky, conducting aerial exercises using a Black Hawk and Chinook helicopters that were provided by the Department of Defense. The operation also included approximately 28 military trucks, really showcasing the state's tactical military strength. Governor Abbott saying the Texas DPS tactical strike teams consist of DPS troopers, special agents, and Texas Rangers. They will coordinate with the newly established Homeland Security Task Force with support from DPS Aircraft Operations Division and the Intelligence and Counterterrorism Division. The goal here is to track down the nearly 5,400 individuals that Governor Abbott says have active warrants, many of whom are linked to criminal networks, repeat offenders, or gang activity. The team will focus on high-risk areas along the border and across the state. Officials emphasize that this training exercise is designed to support the ongoing mission of border security, highlighting the state's commitment to safeguarding its borders.
Having those close working relationships helps us accomplish our border security mission.
Our main priority is always ensuring that our communities are safe, which is why we work in close collaboration with our partners. Another thing being that Title VIII sanctions are in effect, which means anybody who is illegally crossing into the United States will be apprehended, detained, and removed.
Governor Abbott deploying 400 additional soldiers, C-130s, and Chinook helicopters to the border on Monday. They join the thousands of soldiers already deployed down to the southern border. The Department of Defense has at least 4,100 troops along the southern border right now.
We thank Ali Bradley. And breaking news, Canada's Trudeau also retaliating against Trump's tariffs, joining Mexico. We have those details coming up next. Our NewsNation correspondent spanning out on the ground across the border from Texas to California and just into our newsroom, Mexico and now Canada issuing retaliatory tariffs on Trump. We'll be monitoring for a trade war that could impact your grocery bill. We certainly thank you for your time tonight. I'm Natasha Zuves. Stick with us right here on NewsNation. More coverage on NewsNation Prime straight ahead. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.